So I'm again excited about where we're going to go. And we will go from 300 million users, and next time around we'll be at 1 billion users. And that trend rate of adoption just continues higher. So it's all to play for. And it feels always the darkest before dawn. And Christ, does it feel ugly right now. I mean, everybody hates everybody, and everybody's accusing everybody of being a scam. It's Pellini Montrachet, in case you're asking, which is my favorite white wine from Burgundy. Okay, so let's talk about this adoption and what's driving it. You see, that's what the conversations in Raoul's Adventures in Crypto are about. I go and choose the people I want to speak to, not who want to speak to me, not who the team tells me that I want to speak to, because I want to learn from. So I get to cherry pick everybody, and I'm in a very privileged position. There's a bit of magic here, is these things are priced in ETH. So if ETH goes up and the price of my punk stays the same, I get all of the gains in ETH. But if my punk goes to the same high or a new all-time high, I can get a leveraged upside. Now, what's the downside of my punk? Is it 25% down from here? Maybe. But if ETH's going up, it's just a bit of a drag of versus my ETH. I've got ETH in my portfolio. So I'm just using my ETH. Now, I don't do it to a lot of my portfolio, maybe 10% or so, just to, and it's not an exact number, I'm just guessing, is really I'm doing that for the sake of getting an extra kicker. And I also like the NFT space. I'm really interested in where it's going. And I like these assets. I like the story behind them. I like how they're playing out and what happens. I want to see what Yuga Labs does. I think it's great. So it gives me an extra kicker. It's like a call option on top of my ETH position, because I'm not getting rid of ETH because they're priced in ETH. A lot of people don't understand this, but really I get the ETH appreciation and I get potentially the NFT appreciation. I prefer that to staking, because staking I'm going to get 6%, 4%, 5% upside, and I trade off my liquidity for it. Here I get maybe a 25% downside, but maybe I get a 4x upside versus my ETH. And I'm giving up some liquidity, but apes and punks, they're pretty liquid. Culture, NFTs, metaverses are all coming together in something bigger. The amount of capital flowing into these particular projects is gigantic. Yes, they're expensive projects to do as well. But I think that is another thing we need to be looking out for in 2023, 2024, into 2025. We're going to see in all sorts of really interesting developments. So we've got, don't forget, also on the layer one side, we haven't had it on yet, are the Aptos guys and the Sui guys. Sui's not launched yet. Super fast, amazing chain that's come out of the Facebook group who built their entire business lines there, same as Aptos. So those are two new players in the space. Arbitrum is another one of the layer twos that's interesting. So lots to watch there in the traditional crypto space. Let's see how the incumbents, let's see if the XRP lawsuit gets settled. That's going to be interesting too. And I think it cleans a lot of the space up. Regulation. We've had some shitty regulation with the library deal, but we need some clarity. XRP is going to be one of them, and then we'll get a few more tests. Who's going to regulate all of this space? Next big question. Is it going to be Gary Gensler? Is Gary Gensler going to go into a different job? Is Gary Gensler going to lose a job over FTX? Is the CFTC going to get the majority of it? I don't know. We're going to find out. But I know there's a lot of people fighting the fight here. People like Ryan Selkis, Senator Loomis, and a whole bunch of others who are in DC, Brian Armstrong, making sure we get the right rulings and a fairness that the space requires to flourish. The US needs to regulate properly, and the SBF debacle proved that. Now, SBF was another person on the show, and barefaced lied to us about who he is and what he does. He was basically telling us he was trying to, put equities on chain and clean up the space and buy these businesses because we need to sort this out and move forwards, when what he was doing was barefaced lying because he'd gone bust and used customer money. Another extraordinary moment in time in Real Vision history where we get to see that in real time. And, a bloody sad event. But typically, if you're going to build businesses in this space, you need to be regulated if you're going to take people's money. I don't care what you say. Now, DeFi is different because it's written into the smart contract how you get liquidated and how you're dealt with. It cannot be fraudulently manipulated by people. As you know, I was in pretty early, 2013. I wrote the first ever macroeconomic strategy paper valuing Bitcoin back then too, and bought it at $200. And I put a decent sized position in. I'm like, this is the best risk reward I've ever seen in my life. I said, I think fair value is $1 million. And let's say Raoul's a total idiot by 90%. So therefore fair value is 100 grand. At $200, best risk reward I've ever seen in my entire career. So I bought it. Fucking genius. Raoul, you're a god. We can have that halo. Amazing. I rode it up. I had a long-term time horizon, 5 to 10 years. I rode it up. It went up. It went up 5x to 1,000. I was like, I really am a god. You know, look at me. I'm just the best investor in the world. Then it falls 85%. I'm like, oh, well, remember the long-term picture. And that's not flipping around from being a trade to being long-term. It was long-term when I defined it and long-term as it is now. So it comes all the way back down. I kind of get a bit bored, 2014. Then 2015, it starts basing and going up again. 2016, it's going up a lot. 2017 explodes. We get the forking wars, all sorts of complications. I'd already gone through, you know, seeing bloody everything from Mt. Gox to Bitfinex to all sorts of stuff. So I'd gone through the wars, now the forking wars, the ICO boom, all sorts of shit going on. I'm like, I don't know, I don't understand this. I'm going to take profits, 10x. And that was stupid because I actually traded against what I set the trade up to be, which was a long-term trade. Anyway, I've made 10x. Great. It went up another 10x after that. And I remember writing on Twitter, I got so much hate for selling out. And I'm like, listen, I don't mind if it goes up another 10x. I've made a lot of money in the trade. Everybody hated me. Then it collapsed. Then it collapsed down 85%, down the backside again. You know, the monetary tightening going into 2018, much like 2022, a terrible year for assets. Everything goes down. And then eventually Bitcoin bases in November, December at the bottom of the liquidity cycle when the Fed stop easing and it starts clawing higher. I'm not looking at it. Dan Tapiero taps me on the shoulder in 2019, said you've got to focus on this. And I start to refocus and I'm watching the chart pattern and eventually pull the trigger in March, April, May, June 2020 at great levels, and off we went to the races. So I traded brilliantly. I bought it at 200. I sold it at 2,000 or 2,500, whatever it was. I bought it back at the end of a bear market, but I bought it back averaging about, I don't know, 7,500, 8,000. I started at about 6,000. And I thought, I wonder what I'd done if I just kept my initial bet in and done nothing else, never traded again. The answer, I would have done 5 times better. That was a shock to me. 5 times better. And I put massively more in June 2020 than I had in 2013. So I'm like, okay. That's what really hammered home the final lesson about long-term trends. And then I thought, well, I also know this network adoption model, and I know this logarithmic trend, and I know this monetary tightening cycle. What happens if I just added the same position every time it got here? So all I've been doing is letting it come down, and as soon as we've got here, I started really adding in June. And I've been adding ever since. Now, it's a recession. Nobody's got a lot of cash, and nor do I. But I'm doing what I can because, you know, every time you get here, the upside is 10, 20, 30x, depending on what you're buying and where you are. And obviously, you'll get 1,000x and whatever it is, random thing. I can't pick those things ever. You're lucky if you get them.